Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my international 10-minute moans. Second one of today and the second one of this trip abroad. Now, the topic of this one is fantastic. It is the Telegraph story where they have declared former Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf is facing a review over his £250,000 of Gaza funding. What a great article. Now, the story was covered again by Camilla Turner, who done a fantastic job when, was that around about March, when I gave her the FOI information about this originally, and the thing just went bang. Remember, it ended up all over the world, all over, every paper covered it, and even attracted a 9-page Saturday morning Twitter retort from Humza Yousaf himself, in which he described me as a far-right online conspiracy theorist. So, got some more information back. Guess who I gave the information to? And guess who wrote a fantastic report about it? So, Camilla's story goes, accusation of conflict of interest and breach of ministerial code will be examined. Former First Minister Humza Yousaf faces a probe into a series of donations the Scottish Government made to Gaza aid agency while members of his family were trapped in the war zone. Earlier this year, the Daily Telegraph revealed that Mr Yousaf overrode officials to give £250,000 to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, UNRWA, some people describe it as. He stepped in after officials recommended a £100,000 to £200,000 donation to UNICEF, totally different UN charity, the United Nations agency that provides humanitarian aid to children to fund water programmes in Gaza. Those of you who followed that story a few months ago remember I covered it in about 4 videos. It was myself that got the FOI and we went to town with it, and the whole story is explained in them. I'll put some of them in the links so that folk who weren't aware of it at the time can see the old videos. But he overruled their advice, declaring instead £250,000 of taxpayers' money should instead be given to UNRWA, the biggest international aid agency operating in Gaza, which had been criticised over alleged links to Hamas. Mr Yousaf told officials that since he was about to meet UNRWA, we should just announce an extra £250,000 to them. That email was a bit damning, wasn't it? And that's in one of my videos. It later emerged that the donation came from the International Development Fund, a £10 million fund that is meant to be ring-fenced for projects in 4 partner countries: Malawi, Rwanda, Zambia and Pakistan. Now, the Sunday Telegraph has learned that Scottish Government is conducting a review of the processes involved in our response to the humanitarian crisis in Glasgow. I like this next bit. The admission was made in response to a Freedom of Information request submitted by Craig Houston, a Glasgow resident who's been following the case on his YouTube channel, Craig Houston Talks To. Thanks very much for the mention there, Camilla. A Scottish Government spokesperson said, the review, which will focus on evolving future Scottish Government humanitarian funding mechanisms and processes, will be announced in due course. I've got the FOI there. I'll do a video maybe later on today or tomorrow, and I'll put out all the stuff that they gave me, and it doesn't mention anything about it will happen in due course. Right? It tells you it's happening. So I think somebody at the Scottish Government, the spokesperson's maybe telling me porky pies, but I'm sure this is an evolving story, and we'll find out more. The Scottish Government's £250,000 donation was publicly announced on November 2nd, the same day that Mr Yousaf met a delegation of senior UNRWA officials in Edinburgh. Mr Yousaf's mother-in-law and father-in-law were given safe passage out of Gaza via the Rafah crossing the following day, November the 3rd. Mr Yousaf, who resigned as First Minister in April, has denied that the donation was in any way connected to the release of his family. A spokesman said at the time the UNRWA had no role in the situation regarding the First Minister's extended family, and any suggestions of a conflict of interest in this matter would be completely untrue. However, the First Minister faced accusations that his interference in the allocation of aid process amounted to a conflict of interest, as well as questions over whether his actions breached the ministerial code. Now this is weird. Mr Yousaf's in-laws travelled to Gaza in early October to visit relatives, but became stranded when the war began. Border crossings in and out Gaza were shut after Hamas terrorists invaded southern Israel on October the 7th, murdering 1,200 people and taking 240 hostages. The Scottish Ministerial Code states that ministers must ensure no conflict arises or could reasonably be perceived to arise between their public duties and their private interests, financial or otherwise. Kind of think that when your mum-in-law and father-in-law are in a country that's a war zone that you've just gave, two donations totaling £750,000 to within a couple of weeks, and one of them, the day before the release for that country, kind of suggests a perceived conflict of interest. Okay. Anyway, earlier this year, Britain, the United States and other countries suspended funding to UNRWA after 12 of its workers were sacked following accusations by Israel they participated in the October 7th attacks. The UN also launched its own inquiry into claims. There we go. Mr Yousaf was forced to quit as First Minister in April after it became clear that he would lose a vote of no confidence in the Scottish Parliament. His leadership had started to unravel following his decision to scrap the SNP's coalition deal with the Scottish Greens. So there we go. So what we have found out here is there's definitely a review, and the paper, since giving them the information, have found out that that review will look at allegations of conflict of interest and breaking ministerial code. That information was not on the FOI, so that's obviously a journalist being a journalist and doing a good job. But the information I got tells you that the review is ongoing. What they seem to have told the journalist is that the review will happen and we'll receive details in due course. So let me just get the quote from, where was it? No, it's not that one. There we go. Scottish Government spokesperson said the review, which will focus on evolving future Scottish Government humanitarian funding mechanisms and processes, will be announced in due course. That suggests it's still to happen, which sort of contradicts the information I had. But nonetheless, I don't know where this is going to end up. This is a story where I contacted the Ethics and Standards Commission and asked them to look at it, in which they wrote back to me and said they couldn't because Mr Humza Yousaf was out with their reach because they could only investigate MSPs. And he was the First Minister at the time. And they were unable to investigate First Ministers or any minister, so anybody in the Cabinet, which I found a bit odd. And their correspondence to me suggested that the only place I could complain would be the Office of the First Minister, because it could be a ministerial code break, and that's who I was to write to. Now, since then, we've got a new First Minister, so I've not decided what to do. You might write to him, but if they're going to investigate it anyway for potential ministerial code breaks, then I'd kind of be wasting my time. But it's still an ongoing thing with me. I'm still investigating it, and obviously Camilla Turner's still got a watchful eye on it, and because she's done as good a job the last two pieces of information I've gave her, she'll continue to be my first point of contact whenever I get more information on it. So, can't thank Camilla enough for, that's now 2 stories she's covered through my FOI information, and she's been very kind enough to give me some nod on the pieces, which is fantastic, and I'm very grateful for that. But I'll still be sniffing all over this story. Just because Humza's now not the First Minister, I'll still be all over it like a bad rash, because it's stinking. And I don't believe the good people of Scotland have got the full story yet. And I'll keep digging. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please subscribe and hit the notifications bell. But most important of all, Mr Humza Yousaf, the SNP, or any of the cult that still follow him. Everybody else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.